Welcome to Conversations with Peter Boghossian. I'm here with none other than Posie Parker, and we were supposed to meet live person to person last time when I was down under, but you had some, so shall we say, you had some difficulties.
I did, yeah, just minor difficulties.
Minor difficulties. So someone on Twitter wanted me to ask you for updates since the last time we spoke. What's been going on?
So specifically about New Zealand and about the attack.
About anything.
Oh, okay. So there's the New Zealand attack. I was going to go back to New Zealand. My kids asked me not to, so I didn't go. But the man who assaulted me wanted to get everything dismissed, and he failed. So he's going to trial in February. There was another man who was charged with assault for punching an elderly woman in the face repeatedly. So
he was achieving social justice.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, he was obviously the victim in that story. So
right, he was beating up a Nazi.
He was.
He was assaulting a fascist.
An elderly woman wanting to speak about her rights clearly deserved a violent assault. So
right.
that was interesting. And then I've submitted my campaign, or rather my political party called Party of Women,
POW,
and I've done numerous outdoor events, which is where I go and speak and create space for women to talk.
What tell me about POW?
So the Party of Women is basically, we've tried since campaigning in 2018. I've been doing it really seriously. So we've done some of the things that I set out to do, which was to tell normal people, so the silent majority, which we talk about a lot, they have no idea that when they talk about certain issues, what they're talking about. So they didn't know when they use the word trans woman, they were talking about a man with a penis. They thought they were talking about a post-op. Well, they thought they were talking about a post-op so-called transsexual, right?
Right.
So when you and they also think that they're talking about a very vulnerable, kind of small person that just wants to quietly live their lives. So I think part of what I wanted to do was let people know what's going on. Like, let John, the builder, know that his daughter's going to be on a race or on a hockey field or whatever, potentially with a boy, and he's going to be in her changing rooms and he's going to be in her toilet. And when his elderly mother goes into hospital, she might be actually the nurse in front of her, who's supposed to be a woman, will actually be a man, or in her home. So those are the issues.
And when you tell, what'd you say, John the builder, when you tell someone that, like someone who doesn't participate in this space, what do they say? Well,
I think most people are like, well, of course I don't want that man in spaces with my daughter. You know, it's not so much that you're having to convince somebody of the arguments. You just have to tell them that the issues exist, because I think often they have no idea the issues exist. And in addition to that, they have no idea that other people are operating against their kids. So they don't know that it's going on in schools. They don't know that the health service is completely co-opted, or the police. And so that's kind of how I saw my job.
What do you mean the police?
So I've been interviewed by the British police on 3 occasions. I've been arrested once, and I've had the police at my door because I was being untoward about paedophiles.
Well, the police physically came to your house, your home?
Yeah.
Like where you live?
Yeah.
And what did they say to you?
Well, for a start, they harassed my daughter a little bit, who was in, so I have where I work, and my 2 offices in my front driveway. And they sort of asked my daughter her name and what she was doing. And she was 14, 15. And then they said, oh, we've had a complaint because on one of your videos, you're being untoward about paedophiles. And I just said, well, I would have thought of all the people
about pedophiles.
The people you can be untoward about are pedophiles. And they said, well, I don't want to argue. But yeah.
Just to be clear, since I'm sure that someone watching this is like, that could not possibly be the case. Maybe you're trafficking in some different definition of pedophile. What do you mean by pedophile?
I mean a man who wants to rape children. That's what I mean by pedophile.
The normal dictionary, like if you look in the dictionary, that's what a definition is.
I mean, I'm being facetious because verbatim, that is what they said. But I think what they meant is that I was implying that somebody was a pedophile by saying that any man that dresses however he dresses, that invades a space where he knows that there are going to be little girls nude or semi-naked or getting dressed or in private, then I think that is a predatory paedophile move. So that's likely what they were talking about, but he chose the words untoward about paedophiles. So that was, yeah.
Wow, that's really that's fascinating. Like pedophile as a protected class.
Well, I think that's coming, isn't it? Because there have been academic kind of little MAP, like minor attracted persons.
Yeah, MAP, I love that.
And it's a sexual orientation.
Yeah, I
So,
remember. I'm not going to mention the name of the institution where I taught, but I was told that I was not allowed to render my opinion or make my opinion known about protected classes, and pedophile may certainly. I don't know. I wonder. I asked what a protected class is. They wouldn't tell me, but it'd be interesting to know if MAP, which is the new classification, which has neutral valence. It's not a pejorative. Well, I guess it's not a linguistic pejorative. Like it's not a pedophile. It's just a sticky of badness is sticky to it. So yeah, that's really interesting. If you can normalize the behavior by preventing criticism of it, then it can spread throughout the society.
Yeah, and if you sort of couch it in, they can't help it. They can't help it. Therefore, they are protected. They we should feel sympathy for people who want to rape kids because they can't help it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I could never do this today, but there was a paper that I assigned in class a while ago. This is quite a while ago. So let's start with let's just do a thought experiment. I'm thinking out loud here. I use these increasingly to just think out loud. So let's say that you can't change your sexual orientation.
Yes.
Particularly as a guy. Like I can't just become gay tomorrow, in spite of what everybody thinks Reed and I are gay, but I can't. So I can't change that. You can't change. But I think if you drill down on that, and if you get a little more granular on that, you can't really change without trafficking in particulars. You can't change the specifics of what you like. Like you like certain things, I like certain. Everybody has their own thing. So there are some people who legitimately are wired in such a way. Fortunately, I'm not one of these people who's attracted to children.
Yes.
So the question then becomes, I think I would hope, I know you and I can agree, but I would hope we could agree as a society that if somebody suffers from that, we cannot allow them to act upon it, right? That's just an absolute red line. So I would hope we could agree with that. So I guess the question would become, so here's what I'm thinking. Like, do we allow these people to access child pornography in certain places so that they can discharge their urges on the pornography in the hopes that if they do that, they won't go to children, given that they're wired like that anyway?
Well, a few things. Number one, how would you make that? Even if I thought that was right, I do think actually that you would feed the desire as opposed to, I don't think you would spend.
So they would act on it.
Well, I just think it would make it bigger, more real. People that end up murdering women, for example, often there's like a psychosexual kind of stage to that. And it might start with flashing, then it might start with like minor sexual assault, like, I don't know, wearing women's clothes and going into a women's changing room. It might be sort of little violations, and then it builds up to sort of serious sexual assault, then rape, then murder. So there is a nice little pathway. Yeah. And I don't think showing, for a start, how would you make that pornography without using children?
Or you'd find something that you'd either do it digitally or you'd find something that's already there. I'm just trying to think about, if the goal is to minimize harm to children, then the question is, how do we best do that? And I'm not advocating this. I'm just thinking out loud, like maybe a solution, maybe a way. And again, I'm not advocating. I'm just thinking out loud. Like maybe a way to do that would be to give people who have these proclivities access to materials with children. I don't know, maybe they register, they go into a building and they masturbate something. I don't know.
Yeah, I just think when it comes to, so for example, I know about a super brothel in Germany, And some of the things you can do in the super brothel are things that are just really quite repulsive. And I think what happens with that is people do go on they get to a level of satisfaction and it's not satisfaction anymore. And then they need to go to the next level and the next level. So I think if you were given images of child rape or given a child sex doll, for example, which they sell.
That was the second thing I was going to say.
Then I think that I think you would get to a limit to that where actually the only thing you would then want to do would be to rape a child.
So I don't want to go down. This is an ugly conversation. I don't want to go down, but I am really thinking about, like, we want to protect the welfare of kids. We want to protect the welfare of women. I'm sorry, Reed.
React to that chat.
React to this whole chat.
This chat here. This comment. Can you read that?
No, it's on hide. Oh, that's a bizarre suggestion, Peter. Gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me react to that. So, what are the alternatives? What are the alternatives to? We have people out there who want to rape children. How do we deal with those people?
I think probably the same way as you deal with anybody who has a compulsion to commit crime, and this obviously would be one of the most despicable crimes that we could think about. And you have law and punishment. And I think we accept that there are some things we can't change about people. We might not be able to change someone ever,
but we want to preempt it. Let me throw out this as a parallel to that person who said that. We know it's been a while since I've read this literature, but we know, and of course there are causal variables, cultural variables. Of course, this is the case, but we know in countries that have legalized prostitution, they have lower rape rates. And again, we know that there are cultural.
Do we
variables.
know that?
Well, the question is why, right? The question is, why is this the case? But bracket this for a second.
Okay.
So it could be. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it could be. If we have found empirically that prostitution lowers rape rates, wouldn't that be a good argument for legalized prostitution? And similarly, if we know, and I'm not saying we know this, I'm just saying if we know that it's like giving people with these urges dolls or video, I mean, I don't know what it would be, if that would decrease harm to actual children. And if you knew that based on the evidence, then would it not be immoral not to act in those ways?
That's a lot of caveats. And I think because your starting point is wrong, which we don't know. In fact, we do know the opposite is true. And also prostitutes are more likely to be raped than anybody else in any other sort of scenario with a man. So I think we know that prostitution actually increases rape because it puts a woman in front of a man that he no longer sees as anything but something he's paid for.
Right.
And so I'd be happy to see some evidence, but I doubt very much if prostitution reduces rape.
Okay. So let's talk about this because people are losing their shit on the chat. So let's talk about this.
Okay.
Saying no, that's not good enough, or saying ick, that's not an argument. That doesn't do anything but just let people know, "Ooh, I don't like it." Okay. I'm talking about so what Posie did was she made an argument. And so then what we do is then we have another variable in that calculus. Okay. So maybe it increases rape rates or maybe it doesn't. But then we have to seriously consider the fact that if there's prostitution, that there are going to be men who rape women. And so then we this is what we do in civilized societies. We make arguments, we look at the evidence, we look at examples, and then we come up with public policies based upon the best available evidence. And people out there saying ick or it's not good or etc., that's infantile. So make an argument, or I don't know, make an argument like you just did.
We also have to, what you also have to consider when we look at whether or not legalizing prostitution is good, you look at the societal harm. So for example, in Germany, because brothels are legal, teenage children design their ideal brothel in their PSHE at like 14 or 15. So it commodifies women in a way that I think has a really wide societal harm, way beyond rape statistics.
Yeah, so that's important. We're going to watch a Mary Harrington clip in a second, but I want to speak to that. So that's an example of something that's hard to measure, right? It's hard to quantify what the harm is in the commodification of women.
Mm.
But it is a variable, right? But
Yeah.
it's something that we need to take into account. We just don't know how that weighs out. All right, Reed, let's play that clip, please. Oh yeah, let's put on our headphones.
Oh yes.
It's exactly what we're not doing right now with our current social
Right.
culture.
So there's an implicit definition of the best there. Mary, you've written a fair bit about your dissatisfaction with a kind of mindless conception of progress. We heard progress celebrated as a concept this morning, but you're concerned about misapprehended progress, I suppose, and also about technological progress, technology being conflated with progress.
That's right. I mean, the technologies of the sexual revolution are the foundation on which we base the illusion that we can escape from traditional sexual norms, because they do go some considerable way to flattening the fundamental differences between the sexes, which are what produce those norms. I mean, if you think what's now called the sexual double standard really arose out of the fundamental asymmetry in who gets pregnant. You know, the idea that women are punished more heavily for having sex outside marriage comes straightforwardly from the fact that it's women who get pregnant, and fatherless babies are everybody's problem. You know, they're not just something which can be palmed off on an individual. So there are real, in absent reliable contraception, there are real practical problems which, however unfairly, were managed by these asymmetrical social norms around who's allowed to do what and with who. And then birth control, fairly reliable birth control comes along, and suddenly it seems as though we don't need those constraints anymore, because actually women can have sex just like men. As it turns out, and as Louise has written so persuasively, in fact it doesn't quite work out like that, and in fact there are as many negatives as there are positives to that apparent increase in freedom.
So sometimes I have trouble understanding what she's talking about. So one of the things that she's mentioned and others have mentioned too is the effects of technology on social norms like birth control. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I just think it's crazy to try and equate a woman's sexual experience of the world in general, and also intimate relationships, and men. Like when we're talking about heterosexuals, you know, the exchange is very, very different. And so I think to sort of, we get, you know, as a woman, you can't be satisfied in the same way as a man in a very short exchange. You know, we are shortchanged. And so I think to try and make us equal when we're not remotely the same is ludicrous. Whether or not I agree to the extent that sometimes Mary Harrington and Louise Perry go is another issue. But I think that had the sexual revolution not benefit men, I wonder if it would have happened at all, because I don't necessarily think it's benefit women.
Yeah, that argument has gained a lot of currency recently, and I'm going to speak to both of those women and talk to them. But why do you think that's the case?
Well, because look, most of my friends get married or have children and want to stay with the father of their kids. So we're quite invested in long-term heterosexual relationships in which we feel secure, where a man's role is to sort of look after his wife and vice versa. And, you know, you then craft your relationship around what suits you both, right? And I happen to stay home. I've got 4 children, so I stay home with my kids.
And I just met your husband for the first time.
Yeah. I've known him a long time. But it's just this whole idea that women can have it all, or even men can have it all, but women really can't have it all at once. I mean, I'm very lucky. I've got lovely kids. I started having children at 27. My youngest is nearly 15. So now I'm able to be quite free. And my husband's brilliant. So, you know, we work that out between us. But I think that you can have this amazing career and continue your amazing career after you've had babies and nobody loses out is ridiculous. It doesn't work.
How do you consider yourself aligned with those with the thoughts of Perry and
yeah, to a degree. Yeah. I mean, from what I know of them, I haven't read them, either of them, extensively.
Yeah. I want to talk. Somebody asked about people using pro-Palestinian rallies to rally for social justice causes. I think this is from Twitter, right, Reed? I think this is from Twitter. People connect pro-Palestinian rights with decolonization, LGBTQ, gender-affirming rights, etc. Even though Palestine would not support the same causes due to their religion. What's the disconnect? How are people drawing lines from trans ideology to Palestine? And so that's the Mike Nana clip. What explains this amorphous leftist coalition? It's not random. A particular ideological understanding of the world unites these issues. Thread. Here's the quotation. Free Palestine is a feminist issue. It is a reproductive rights issue. It's an indigenous rights issue. It's a climate justice issue. It's a queer rights issue. It's an abolitionist issue. He didn't put decolonization in there. By the way, I guarantee you the leaders of Hamas have not read the decolonial literature.
What?
So, you know, have you seen this? Have you seen people connect these two?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's evident, isn't it? The same people that would protest someone like me on campus are now harassing Jews. I mean, it's scary. It's really frightening, I think.
What do you think the connection between those? What is the connection?
I think the lack of tethering to truth. I think this idea that everything is some sort of virtue signal. You know, you watch women with the Israeli flag and the Star of David in like a little bin and carrying these signs, and I just think, have you any idea what it is that you're talking about? Do you like, is this isn't like a flag waving carnival? This is serious stuff. My view to see this in the UK, for example, and people marching in the streets and Jewish people in this country feeling afraid, I think we should all be really, really quite afraid. But the cognitive dissonance is real. And
when you say afraid, you mean afraid of violence?
Yeah, well, afraid of what's happened to our democracy. You know, we have a social contract where you would not be allowed. Like 10 years ago, if that was a bunch of white people marching about any other minority or country, if they were all marching down the street talking about Pakistan, like that would just be bad manners. People would just think it was disgraceful, disgusting.
Oh, you're talking about
racist.
the pro-Palestinian rallies.
Just like having mass rallies and sit-ins.
Oh, I see.
From people. So Sisters Uncut, for example, they were the people. They are totally pro-trans. They are totally men and women's spaces. They're all for that. They did the sit-in at Liverpool Street station, and what's the disconnect? I just can only think it's just virtue, and it's not real.
All right, cool. Let me pick your brain on one other thing. I think this has been interesting to me. The J.K. Rowling tweet reacting to neo-Nazis showing up at pro-Palestinian rallies. I find this fascinating. So here is the tweet. Hang on.
No, read the Vice News tweet first.
Oh, the Vice News tweet. Thanks. Neo-Nazis are showing up at pro-Palestinian protests in an attempt to push anti-Jewish conspiracy theories and tropes into the mainstream. Here's what you need to know about them. So it's a 6-tweet thread or X thread or whatever you want to call it. Hang on. This is Rowling. When far-right groups eager for publicity/violence agitate near women's rallies, that makes all the women sticking up for their rights fascists. However, when Nazis join a protest you agree with, they're opportunists who mustn't be allowed to besmirch a righteous cause. What do you think?
Well, I mean, that's what happened to me. So yeah. And these are I think that the thing is, we don't really think that, like, in these pro-Palestine rallies, there will be some people that genuinely want peace. There'll be some people that are pretty terrible, calling for jihad. And there'll be some neo-Nazis that go and
all the way around.
Like
everybody.
Of course,
yeah,
because
sure.
That's a huge amount of people, and
Right.
and a lot of them do genuinely think that a ceasefire is the best thing to happen. So those people that will look upon that and say that that is a genuine, wonderful, good force for good, these rallies, are the same people that would say, well, hang on, Kellie-Jay, you're at your rally in Melbourne, neo-Nazis showed up. Therefore, you are Nazi adjacent.
Right.
You are totally in bed with these people. And so, you know, what goes around comes around, I guess. And now they're going to have to either abandon their notion of guilt by association being the way that they like to live, or admit that it's a nonsense.
Has anybody said that you're kind of fascist or Nazi because you've talked to somebody else?
Yeah.
Who have you talked to that these
Oh.
people don't like?
So I was interviewed by a Canadian. Now, I didn't know this man, but he'd interviewed Lindsay Shepherd. Lindsay Shepherd was, do you know her? She was
Yeah.
fired because she shared a Jordan Peterson video, and this guy had interviewed her. And so I thought, well, he's a disgruntled lefty like me. And I looked through, and he'd interviewed evolutionary biologists and so on. So I went on his channel, and then I found out he was an ethno-nationalist. And as soon as I finished the interview, he then had a chat with the people on the live chat whether or not I looked Jewish and whether I was too old to reproduce.
Oh my God.
So like he was a terrible person. Now I thought, oh, no one's going to watch that. I'll just not mention it. But then, yeah, some of the
But that's the
left-wing
thing.
women.
But that's what I understand. If you want to have, who are these people to tell you that you or me, I can't have a conversation with anybody I want to have a conversation? I'm going to have, nobody is stopping me from, I'm simply not going to give anybody any these ideas, any countenance. If I can have a conversation with them, you should be able to have a conversation with anybody you want to.
Absolutely. And had I known his views on other things, I may have chosen not to speak to him unless I was addressing those issues, because I think there's a couple of people that I won't talk to. There's a particular trans activist who sends harassing sort of sexual images of himself to women with disabilities, and there's another man who's
women with disabilities.
Yeah, so he sends pictures of himself in sex dungeons. So I won't talk to him. He's also quite a small. He's, you know, the most audience he has is occasionally tweeting on Twitter. So I won't, when I'm invited on the TV and he's going to be on it, I won't go on. I just refuse to. And there's also a man who is a paedophile apologist who I will not speak to unless I was talking about his paedophile apologism. But I'm not going to go and debate him about something else and not have that man in front of me and address those issues. So aside from that, I can talk to who I like. We can have that conversation that was uncomfortable about how do we best make sure children aren't raped. Now, we should be able to have that conversation.
In fact, I would go way beyond that. We need to have that conversation.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that people with the most unpalatable views, they're the people I most want to speak to about certain things, because without undoing their thinking, without sort of understanding how they think, how do you ever get them past it?
So has anybody ever emailed you to say, hey, I was just about to talk to someone, but I got disinvited or canceled, et cetera, because they found out about my association with you?
Well, you've got Moira Deeming in Australia.
She's terrific, by the way.
So she was kicked out of a party for her association with me.
Yeah.
And there are other people who, because of their associations with me, are, you know, not photographed or, I mean, look, what have I done? I basically, a few years ago, I sat at my kitchen table and I was like, right, I'm going to do a dictionary definition billboard and I need to raise some money. And I sold some T-shirts. And I just say women don't have a penis. No man has a vagina. There's no such thing as non-binary, and transitioning children is abuse. These are normal, right? Yeah, but most people agree with me. I've become some sort of brave woman, often untouchable by all groups, completely untouchable
for those
for just saying those things.
So let's, if you don't mind, let's go over the things again.
No man,
nice and slow.
No woman has a penis.
No woman has a penis. Brendan O'Neill's second chapter of the book is titled Her Penis. Okay, second one.
No man has a vagina.
Okay. Again, if you said those things to people 15 years ago, they would look at you like you're a lunatic.
Yeah.
Like, why are you saying this to me?
Yeah, I think Ricky Gervais says there's no old tweets where somebody says that you can be done for because nobody thought they ever had to say it.
Right.
Who was saying that?
Right.
There is no such thing as non-binary.
Right. Again, 15 years ago.
Yeah. And 5 minutes ago, to be fair. You know, 15 years. I mean, non-binary wasn't even a thing. What, 3 years ago? I don't think many of us had ever heard it. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the evolutionary biologist Jerry Coyne, Richard Dawkins, and others, many of whom I follow on Twitter in that space, Carol Hooven, etc., has some really interesting. I'm not a biologist. You're not a biologist. Has some really interesting the way they parse the data in this, but people don't look at those arguments. They just When people have a problem with it, the first victim of ideology is almost invariably biology. It's not gravity, it's not electricity, it's not electromagnetic, it's none of that stuff. It's biology. So this is something I learned recently. Did you know that for people who are consider themselves non-binary, there's like specific non-binary surgery?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, there's so many different sort of what you can end up with. You can keep your penis and have a vagina. You can have neither. So you can, well, and when I say have a vagina, I mean a hole that never heals. I don't mean genuinely a vagina.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can have nothing. So you can be completely nullified from here. So your nipples removed, your belly button, and just left with
Yes.
pipe work, if you like. I think doctors doing that should be in prison. That's what I think. I think anybody doing that, anyone doing unnecessary surgeries, and there's, we get to an argument where should women be able to have breast augmentation, and I wonder actually whether, when we look at the thin end of the wedge, is that the thin end of the wedge? We got loads of women all over the Middle East that sort of de-Middle East their faces. Is that, are we just focusing on something that actually is so not wholesome that this is the logical conclusion that you can craft yourself into anything?
So let me ask you a question then. You said something. Are you opposed to, first of all, let me say, I have a problem with the word transition. There is no transition.
No.
But let's just use it as a shorthand.
Yes.
But I think it's BS. Do you have a problem with people 18 and over, quote unquote, transitioning?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, I just don't think you've got, look, until I had my baby at 28, 27, I don't know if I was genuinely a grown-up. I think that I made catastrophic errors in my life at 23. I mean, how many people have got tattoos they don't like?
I was just going to say that but we allow people to get tattoos.
Yeah,
We
it's
allow
not quite
people
the same
to,
as irreversible harm, though, is it? Like losing. So there are 18-year-old boys that have, I think it's called an orpingectomy. So they have the testicles removed, and then within 6 months there's regret. Like, what age?
but they probably should have thought of that beforehand.
Yeah, but they're 18. I mean, how old? Like, how grown up were you at 18?
If I
I
made
was
a
an idiot.
mistake at 18, it wouldn't be to cut my testicles off.
No. So
It would be
therefore,
like, I did.
who would make that decision? What sort of person, what sort of state of mind would you need to be in at 18 to make such a massive decision, and it ever be the right one?
Yeah, I guess I don't think that the way to help people become more responsible is to take away their responsibility. I think the way to help people value and become owners and participants in their own authors of their own lives are to give them more responsibility. I just don't think children can be the authors of their own lives. They're limited in what they can do. But I think when it comes to adulthood, that's what it means to live in a free society. Like, we have to allow people to make pretty egregious mistakes.
We do. And maybe we could say that once, so you could embark upon your therapy, and the state would have to, or whoever's going to make money out of the surgery would have to provide 3 years of really decent surgery. And if at the end of that you still want to do it, then maybe we say yes, but that would be after real surgery, because real therapy, because the driver to damage one's body is often from trauma, from childhood sexual abuse. Can we really say as a responsible society that we would enable someone to further harm their already harmed bodies, knowing that it's not going to give them the answer? They're not going to have not been raped as a kid just because they've cut their testicles off.
Yeah, I guess we disagree. One point of disagreement is that would just mean that wealthier people have opportunities to go and get the surgeries in other countries. But yeah, I guess that's a point of disagreement. We can come back to it if you want, but we are in lockstep when it comes to children, right? And so I guess our disagreement is, on the day of your 18th birthday, should you be allowed to get surgery? The other thing we haven't talked about is who pays for it. I don't think the taxpayer should pay for it.
Absolutely not. We're just about to have a hospital in the UK, Chelsea and Westminster, where they are, I mean, one of the people they're employing, and this would be to do phalloplasty, which is, let's face it, it's a It's your forearm stripped, sewn on, often not even kind of in the location that you would expect. But
Yeah, it's a higher rate.
yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
So sewn on, it doesn't work. You have no sexual function. You have no sexual pleasure. You probably can't feel anything. And we're going to start doing that to the tune of 26 patients. I think they want to get up to about 70 patients a year. One of the people is a nurse that deals with tissue death. So one thing they know is that there's going to be a significant amount of necrosis and failure.
Right,
And in fact, even in the States, where they do
because there's
many
no
of these.
blood.
Yeah, I mean, it's no wonder, is it? If you cut a little bit of your arm off and you try and sew it to just under your belly button, that it's not really going to work. It's such a
Ghastly.
it's just it's macabre. It's awful.
Mm.
But yeah. So in the UK, I think people have to pay for it. But you know, then you got to look at what sort of doctor wants to do that.
It's interesting, but I guess I'm push back. We allow. You ever see the movie Pulp? You ever see Pulp Fiction?
Yes.
Remember the scene in Pulp Fiction where there's my dad was so upset with this years and years ago. There's can I swear on this live stream, Reed? Yeah. So there's a guy, I think there's an airport, and one of the lines was like, "Who's the woman with all the shit in her face?" And she just had her entire face covered with like, rings and bones and stuff. But we allow people to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no law against that.
No.
So I guess I'm still at a loss. Like, why is it because it's at sexual organs? Is that like, is it because it has a kind of additional social sexual perception in society that we say, well, you can mutilate your face all you want. We allow that, but we don't want you to mutilate your.
Well, it used to be if you did all that to your face, and you'd
ostracized,
put yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
Now we sort of seem to think that everything is completely permissive. So that's changed somewhat. But I just think that maybe the answer is not banning. Maybe it's not, you don't not let them do it, but you convince people. At the moment, what are we doing? We are telling people that it's great to do it.
Right.
We're lying and saying it's great. And they've got no recourse. I think there was a case in America where they basically went and they made it that doctors couldn't be sued about like childhood transition. And I use that euphemistically, about that butchering kids' bodies.
Right.
That you couldn't then come and sue them as an adult. So that's a case that's gone through. Now, I'm sure there'll be some very clever lawyers who want to make a killing, who will hopefully sue some of these doctors out of existence. I would hope so.
All right, cool. We have a bunch of questions from Twitter. We're just going to fly through these. Someone wants your opinion on the Labour Party.
Useless, pointless, no longer represent the working class, which is what they used to be for. So I thought I might have been wrong all along. No longer represent the working class, and I think they will get elected in the next election.
The Tories?
I think they've been governing this country for the last decade or so, and they have allowed all of this utter shit in schools.
You know about my buddy Lawrence Fox? You know about the Reclaim Party?
Yes.
I know almost nothing about it, except I met them, and they seem super smart, super good guys. What do you think of them? I shouldn't have said anything, because now I feel like I've prejudiced and biased you.
Look, I think any political voice is a choice for the British people. So that's a good thing. But that's why I've decided to do a party of women, because nobody at the moment represents the sort of voice that I want to see in politics. So I have no choice but to become that voice.
And you're going to run yourself. You're going to run for office.
Yeah.
And excuse my ignorance about British politics. Like, at what level is this going to be?
Okay, so what we want to do as a party of women is we want at all levels of government. So we want local government, local councils, PCCs, which are police and crime commissioners. That's an elected role, and then members of parliament. Now, we don't know that we'll get enough votes from members of parliament, but there are some seats. There's sort of proportional representation in the Welsh government. And up in Scotland, it's a little bit easier to get elected as an outsider and not part of a party. But I think where the power is, weirdly, is in local government, because that it really is. That's the difference between an elderly woman having a bloke in her house coming round to sort of help her in her own home, or a woman, or foster services. Actually, they're totally captured, and adoption services are captured. So these are the places. This is where like the real action politics happens. So this is where we want to change it.
So let me ask you a question. So there are, I can't speak to this context again, but in the United States, for example, the presidential election, we do not have compulsory voting like Australia. So only approximately 50% of the people vote. Of those people, 2 to 3%, roughly vote for fringe parties, or they draw penises on the ballot, like in Australia that they do. My friend was telling me they, as a kind of protest vote, they don't want to go. So you have the president of the United States elected by by not even a quarter of the people in the country. So my question to you is, POW, Party of Women, why should a man vote for you?
Well, I think that what we represent is the biggest lie. And there's many, many lies, but this is such an overt lie. This is, saying a woman has a penis is such a massive lie that that's just the start of it. And actually, in countries where women are living a good life, they're generally better countries. Now, that what that looks like is another issue, and that will be up to everybody. But I just want to bring a bit of honesty back, and I just want to bring a bit of common sense and a bit of clarity, and also get this stuff out of schools. I want our kids I just want them to back off. Oh, trans stuff. So the gender stuff,
Okay.
and other lies that we tell. But I think this is the biggest lie, like pretending that our biological reality is some ethereal concept that we can choose. I think that's such a whacking great big lie. I do worry about what happens to a generation of children that are either lying, don't know they're lying, are forced to pretend they believe a lie. So if your kid goes to school now, age 12, and they know that women don't have penises, they can't say that.
Right.
They might be berated by their teachers. They might not have any friends, and all around the school are flags. And
there's a whole lot of pretending going on.
Yeah.
Lots of pretending.
And what does that do to a whole generation? Like, what are we going to find? Are they going to be terribly insecure? Are they going to be but worse in the workplace? I've got a friend who runs a company. Someone started, and I think someone made a slightly off-color joke about, I'm going to starve myself. And the other person was like, I don't find that very funny because my friend's anorexic.
Right.
And they're not robust or resilient. Like, what is this going to look like if there are any jobs left after AI?
Let me ask you two quick questions before I go back to the list of other things people want to talk about. So correct me if I'm wrong. You've lost friends over the stances you've taken.
Well, I've probably made more friends than I have lost.
Okay, bracket the made friends for the moment. You've lost friends. Have you lost friends?
Not really, no.
I just find that to be shocking. Did you have no friends before?
I have a very small amount of very old friends.
Okay. Okay, all right. Someone wants to talk about the Gender Recognition Act.
That's got to go. So one of the first things that I would stick on my manifesto is to repeal the GRA.
What is it?
So the Gender Recognition Act is a legal fiction. It enables somebody to be legally recognized as the opposite sex, just basically by saying that they'd like to, and living as, one of the things is called living as. And I don't really know what that means, and it's not defined. But if you can prove that you've been living as a woman, I don't know, thinking about kittens for 2 years, then you can get a gender recognition. Well, I mean, it's such a, what is living as a woman?
About dogs. Yeah, that's good.
So if you can prove that, then you can get this gender recognition certificate. And that's just been proven in Scotland. That means that you are included in the Equality Act legally as a woman, just in Scotland. And in other places, so for example, you can't have a lesbian group of 24 more lesbians without including a man who calls himself a lesbian. If he's got a gender recognition certificate as a woman, he can be included in your lesbian group.
That's really interesting. A very, very close friend of mine is a lesbian. I seem to have a disproportionate number of gay friends, but a very close friend of mine is a lesbian, and she told me on the dating apps, there's just gender and not sex.
Mm.
The lesbian dating apps, and there are guys on there.
So validating though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the ultimate in woman being validated as a woman is having a lesbian sexual partner.
Yeah. All right. Lyft. Someone wants to ask you about Lyft's Safe Rides for Women's program and its parameters.
I don't know. I'm assuming that it includes men. So I'm assuming that Lyft means, like when it says woman, it means, because it's in inverted commas, it means also men
Oh God,
as women.
I love that idea of an inverted comma. I love that. That's, you never hear Americans say that, and you never hear Americans say bloke either.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I say it
Yeah.
a lot.
All right, let's do this one. Classism. Anti-woke equals uneducated, bigot, sexist, racist, working class. I'm not quite sure I understand that.
So if you're against woke, so in this country, we might say if you're against the woke, if you're anti-woke, then that means you're thick and a bit like UKIP. People that voted for Brexit, they're the same people as being accused of they're anti-woke. It would be somebody who probably is a manual worker or low paid. Racist, meaning they'd rather a load of undocumented migrants didn't arrive on our shores and be put up in nice hotels. They would be the racist working class.
It's interesting. Reed and I went to a talk by Peter Thiel at Oxford, and he said something that I never thought about. Like, I never even considered it. He said that the mass migration to the UK causes an increase in housing prices, which is profoundly unfair to poor people, to working class poor people, and to young people. And it just literally never occurred to me. But he knew the data, the numbers. He's talking about, like, I don't even know, inverse of point to, I don't even know what he was talking about, but I thought that interesting. Okay. How society recovers after we reach some, how society recovers after we reach some equilibrium on gender ideology. So once this madness has gotten out of the society, how do we protect our institutions, government, and kids? So let's say that tomorrow people are like, holy shit, this was a mass delusion. Like, what were we talking about? Everybody was pretending to not know things that we all know. I can't believe this. Oh, can I tell you a quick story that was kind of cool? So this person we know was telling Reed that this guy was dating a trans woman. Remember that, Reed? The guy, I've told the story like 10 times. Reed's sick of the story. I just find it to be fascinating. This guy was dating a trans woman, and this person said, "Oh, you mean you were dating a man?" And the guy said, "No, I was dating a woman." And this person, "No, you were dating a man." And the person said, "Well, did this person have a penis?" "Yes." I'll spare you the vulgarities of what came subsequent to that, but he was just adamant that he was straight and that this man was a woman. I mean, can you imagine once that spell breaks? I mean, the right response to that is, "Oh, well, I'm bisexual and nobody should care. It's my own business. My sex life is my business." And of course, it's the business of the person you're sleeping with, but it's literally nobody else's business. But that level of, like, I just found that to be, fascinating.
Well, the homophobia that dwells within. It's just homophobia, isn't it? He just doesn't want to be gay. I think that used to be a lot of the we sort of thought that transsexuals were mostly gay men as well, I think.
Right.
And
right.
now we know that they're autogynephiles. So
Right. Okay, we could talk about that in a second. I'm just reading a book about that now. So, how society recovers. So tomorrow we wave a magic wand. Everybody wakes up, as Dan Dennett says. We break the spell. Once that happens, how do we protect our institutions and our kids from this madness?
Well, we already had it, right? We had something called safeguarding, and we had really rigid rules about safeguarding, and they just all went out the window.
Yeah.
I think the ability for dangerous ideologies. So the Paedophile Information Exchange was like a pro-paedophile organization that was in the 60s and 70s. I don't believe they ever went away. They just rebranded. And they've used this particular sort of safeguarding attack to their advantage. So I think that they parasitically invade organizations and the judiciary, and that's exactly what's happened with this trans stuff, is they've invaded so that you can't have these conversations. Now, how do you stop that happening? Well, I don't know if human nature affords that. I just don't. I think we are always going to do the benefit of the doubt style kind of, oh, he just wants to use the women's toilets because he wants to be validated. And, you know, who are we to say? I think there's always going to be those people. So I don't know that you can. I just think that people have to stay awake to it. And they're kind of, that's it. I think human nature will just always allow nonsense in. We've just got to be ready to speak up.
Yeah, we need strong institutions. It was interesting. Years ago, I took my son to a public pool, and I was in the locker room, and there was a man in the locker room with an erection, and I told the person outside that there's a person in the shower standing there with an erection, a formidable erection, I might add. Not to color the story, but you know, it wasn't something that one could easily avert their eyes to. And this
It's an unexpected value judgment.
I'm dying over there. And the manager said to me, well, is he touching anybody? Is he hurting anybody? And I told him the truth. I said, no, he's just standing in the shower. But it made me think about norms in society and the kind of norms, like, it's just so obvious to me that that's inappropriate. I mean, inappropriate is kind of a bullshit word, but you know, but it's just so obvious to me that, but I mean, I don't know. It's like, do we really live? Let me tell you, it's a really bizarre story. So I had dinner a while ago with a lawyer. This is going to be a total curveball. Okay. So I had dinner a while ago with a lawyer who represented a client who was homeless. And the client, this homeless guy, fell asleep in a dumpster. And evidently the dump truck picked him up and crushed this poor bastard. And he didn't die, but he was, as as one could imagine, he was very seriously injured. And he was suing because, and I'm going to connect these stories in a second.
Okay. I'll be ready.
Yeah. He was suing because the dumpster didn't say on it, it said, do not play in or around dumpster. It didn't say, do not sleep in dumpster. And so he was claiming that because there wasn't sign. And I said that, I told this guys, like, you could not possibly list all of the things you can't do on a dumpster. I mean, the whole do not drive car into dump. I mean, there's just an infinite number of things you could do. But similarly, in a changing room or in communal spaces, there's just an infinite number of things that break social norms. Like, you can't have this 10,000 page document. I guess, I don't know, maybe you could because it seems like a weird kind of legalistic society that lends itself to all kinds of litigious whatever. But like, we just need some norms in society. And as society's norms break down as an intentional level, it's unclear to me how to regain those norms. Like, it would have been unthinkable in 57 that I would, like, I wouldn't even have thought about going. Nobody would have thought about going in the women's room.
No.
Like, there was not even it wasn't even an option to be an option.
No.
So I guess I take that as kind of the essence of the question. How do you, like, how do we make norms in society so that people don't stand in locker rooms with erections, so that, I mean, because we're losing something in the society. It's not even basic. It's even more basic than civility.
Well, I think a lot of time people think it's not their business. So we've sort of lost our capacity to believe that our society is the responsibility of us all. So, for example, that worker in that pool, maybe 40 years ago, if you'd gone and told somebody who worked in the pool, they would have been invested in people having a nice time at the pool.
Yeah.
So they would have gone and sorted that out. Like, I used to go to a small cinema that was run by an Irish lady called Mrs. Erner. And if anyone was talking during the film, she would come in and probably hit them with a torch.
Yeah.
But she would come in, or flashlight.
Yes, very
she
good
would-
for our American audience translations.
She would come and do that, and people, there was a respect for older people, and people had respect for themselves. And when you went in a shop, for example, the shop assistants wouldn't be talking to each other. They wouldn't
Yeah.
look bored. They'd think it was their job to actually be nice to you and treat you as a customer and a consumer, that they cared about your business. Like, loads of those things have fallen by the wayside. And maybe they're not getting paid as much. Maybe actually everybody's a bit miserable. Maybe life is just a little bit more tough,
Yeah.
but in the wrong way. So it's not tough as in you're more tired at the end of the day. It's
Yeah,
just that there's time seems, I don't think people are working longer, but it just feels like they have less time.
Yeah, Jane, people have asked me if they thought I was at least somewhat of a contributory variable to this problem because I'm an atheist. And when Christian
me too.
norms collapsed, that I somehow opened the floodgates to a bunch of deranged people taking over our institutions. Hey, Reed, let's end by playing this clip. I think this clip is something to be. Oh, let's put our headphones.
Let's listen to his lovely voice.
Looks like he's having a nice
Why not?
she, her.
That's why. Okay.
It's okay. It's all good.
But it was not all good.
Hi. I use she, her pronouns. I'm not sir. Yeah, like it's like a knife in the heart.
Mm.
I did specifically ask ahead of time not to be called sir. Yeah, I'm just. Okay. The Sweetwater starts at okay.
I'm so sorry. I apologize.
It's just always like a knife. It always hurts every single time. I was wondering if there's a manager I could talk to about something that happened. Yeah, I was called sir. Oh, okay. It just really sucks every time it happens. Sorry about that. I don't need to be called ma'am. I just need to not be called sir, you know? Thank you. Did you call me sir? I just want to tell you that the person who gave me this called me sir. What? Called me sir. Oh. It's just like, it kind of just hurts a lot to get called sir.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
Very good. Thank you so much. No, yeah. Thank you. I'm not a sir. Nothing like a good misgendering. It is a knife in the gut when I get called sir. I feel like I need to tell him. I need to tell him that hurt. It hurts more though, and it's not intentional because it means like this is sir to him. I know you didn't mean it, but I'm not a sir.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I know you didn't mean it. It's just, it hurts. I know when people clock me, it's fine, but like it does kind of hurt. Thank you. I'm not sir.
Oh, sorry.
Not sir. Not sir. But the guy who dropped the food off, he called me sir twice in a row.
Okay. I'll let him know that, and
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What do you make of that?
I just like the fact that it was like, it's not intentional. They just see me, yeah, you're a bloke. That like everybody you encounter sees you as a man. Like, and
except people in his circle who basically lie to him and tell him he's a beautiful woman.
Yeah, but he must know. He must know. He must look in the mirror and see a man, just like we look at him and see a man.
Do you really think so?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think he wants to. I think in his fantasy, he wants to. And I think a bit like I said when I arrived, that when I look in the mirror, I look very different than I do on camera. I think he might be able to sort of say, oh, I think I passed, but
so we talked about this last time and people have been very upset with me, but I use somebody's preferred pronouns when they ask me to. Like, not that I would when one-on-one conversations, but if I were talking to Reed and referred to you, and I have friends, at the very least friendlies who are trans, and I always use their preferred pronouns. And you said, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said don't do that. That helps them participate in a delusion.
Well, look, I think you have your own free will as to whether or not you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, or whether it's something you want to do and you think it's a bad thing, but you still want to do it because you believe it will spare your friends' feelings. I'm just not prepared to do it in any way, shape, or form, and I think it would be
Yeah.
better if we didn't.
Right.
But I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you how to behave because I reckon you're old enough to decide.
Right. I won't take that personally, but but I would never tell you what to say either. Like what role. So what do you think the role of TikTok is in shaping society's norms?
I think it's China's greatest weapon
Yeah.
against us. I think, and I think we're stupid if we like. I say that frivolously, but I genuinely think it's, it's an information war we're in. Obviously, we've got actual war going on around the world that's devastating. But if you want to corrupt our youth, then look at TikTok. I also think if you see your face on a daily basis, so
Yeah.
I'm sat talking to you and I know what I look like because I can see it on camera, and I'm not going to particularly check myself very much because I'd rather not. But if I'm 15, I can see my face like 100 times a day, 1,000 times a week. And I get to think that then is more about me than the things I say or the things I do. And I think this sort of performance, like him performing,
Yeah.
talking to the camera, going out for lunch on his own, because I would imagine that's about the extent of his friendships, but going out to lunch on his own to sort of catch people out, to then post it and talk about being hurt. I'm so hurt.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't care that he's hurt. It's not really, it doesn't really move me in any way, shape, or form. I don't believe it either. I think he's just entitled, and he's very masculine in his demands and his behavior.
Presentation.
Most women would just, I don't know about women who take testosterone, but I think most women, if somebody kept calling me Miss or Mrs.
Yeah.
or something, I mean, perhaps I'm a little different because I probably would sort of say to someone if it was important, but I think he's just very male.
Yeah, it's
But yeah.
interesting. So just humor me while I think out loud for a second
on.
here. So I'm trying to think about, clearly it's possible for people to be hurt by the wrong things.
Yes.
Like, it's a vulgar example, but if I eat something and I belch and I forget to say excuse me, and Reed over there goes into apoplectic shock,
Hmm.
and he tells me how upset he is about it. I mean, he's just being upset at the wrong thing, right?
Mhm.
So I think to a large extent we've lost the corrective mechanism in society for, everyone. We value being offended. I mean, it really does seem like social breakdown, from the guy with the erection in the public changing room to somebody else being hurt. I mean, I again, I'm trying to avoid the word appropriate, but it clearly seems to be the case that people can be hurt by the wrong things.
Yes. But it doesn't mean that I don't need to be moved by that. I think that's the difference. We've now started listening to those people. Like the whiny kid in the class who would moan about everything. Like they were just told, like, stop it, pull yourself together. That's what you say to kids all
Right.
the time. I remember going to China. So my parents used to live in China. I used to go quite every summer with my children. Now, if my children fall over, the British thing to do, probably the American thing to do, is to go over. Now, what I won't do is I won't inspire, I won't encourage like a huge response. I'll be like, oh, come on, okay, you're fine, brush off.
Yeah.
And then that's how you teach your children not to indulge. You'll see some mothers like, oh my God. And then they will just encourage a child to like totally overreact.
100%.
In China, and I must have seen this about 5 or 6 times, so I can't say out of like over 1 billion people, it's the culture, but kids would fall over, nobody would look. Nobody would do anything, and those kids would get up and then they catch up. And I just think when we indulge that man, like people who said sorry, like of course they're going to, because we're in this culture where if he didn't, he'd probably try and shut the restaurant. But yeah, to indulge these silly responses, I think is to our detriment.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at these chats, people are upset that I'm feeding into the mental illness. They're just Peter feeds. I just, in the same way that I wouldn't tell you to do it, I don't think it should be up to anybody to tell me to do it. No,
No, but they might offer argument as to
yeah,
convince you why you
exactly,
shouldn't anymore.
precisely, and I welcome that. I actually
Mm.
want that. That's the kind of society I want to live in. I want, us to have our disputes, and I don't throw you out of the house as a result, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You don't push me down the stairs. Like, we
Yeah.
present our best argument, like what we were doing when we were talking
Well, I
about
love
the
a
children
juicy
thing.
argument, don't you? I'd like a proper exchange and get to the core of why somebody thinks about something. I just don't think that many people are robust enough to do that. Like, if you totally
Yeah.
disagreed with me and you said, well, I think women do have penises, I'd want to exactly find out what is the fraction of disagreement that we have that means you go off on that path
Right.
and I go off on this path.
That-
And then I'd want to change it.
I completely agree. That's the essence of street epistemology, and I don't want to be wrong. I want to believe things that are true, and I want to stop believing things that are false. By the way, before we do the super chats, I want to tell you something, a quick story. One of the things, have you seen the videos I do where I put people on the lines or the mats, and
I particularly watched your one in Sydney with that lovely woman.
oh, she loves you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that all the time. People come up to me and like, oh my God, do you know her? Do you know her? I'm like, know her. She's my friend. No, but baby, you really get that. I get that a lot. Reading, I get that a lot. People come up and they say something, but I wanted to. Oh, now I forgot I forgot what I was gonna read. What was I gonna say?
Some story related to.
Oh yeah, the
language,
street
yeah.
epistemology. Yeah. It's piggybacking off of what you said. So we put people on the line. They move to a line. We put people on the neutral. But if we throw out a claim and someone stands on the strongly agree and another person stands on the strongly disagree, Reed has these boards, and this is the coolest thing. He'll take the boards and we'll give them the person. We say, we'll hold it to your chest like this so no one can see, and they get a marker, and we say, write down your best reason for standing on strongly disagree. Write down your best reason for standing on strongly agree. They write it down. Then we have the one person guess what the best reason is, and people can't do it. In fact, I did one with the priest, right, Reed? I did one with the priest. It was God exists. Is that it? I think it was God exists. What's your best reason for believing there's a God? He wrote his down. I wrote mine down, and neither one of us could guess the best reason that the other person believed that. And I found that to be fascinating, like genuinely fascinating.
What was his reason?
Oh, the problem of good. There's this
Okay.
thing, a problem of evil, of like suffering, and how do you explain good? And there's goodness in the world. And my reason is there's just no evidence for it. I mean, I don't. This is for the same reason I don't believe in the.
I
tooth
used to be an
fairy.
anti-theist, but I'm far less of an anti-theist now.
Oh,
I'm
because of
just
the
an atheist.
derangement syndrome that's taken over
Well,
society.
I do wonder whether the human psyche requires a belief in something beyond ourselves. And now that we've just got ourselves, like in most secular societies in the UK and US, it's terrible. I talked to Peterson and he said, because I said I'm more inclined to believe in evil than I am to believe in God.
Yeah.
And apparently that's a root. But I didn't believe in God as a child. I didn't, my father was an atheist. So I have lots of people have a place to return to in their psyche, in their memory, in their sort of formative years. I don't have that place. So for me to find God would be completely like left field.
Right.
I just don't think it could happen.
Yeah, it's interesting how many people want to talk to you about that. You have a you hit on something that Reed and I talk about, the substitution hypothesis. Like, so people just have to have belief as the default. They have to believe in something. So isn't it better that they believe in a benign form of Christianity than they believe in wokeism? I had a conversation with Dave Silverman, former head of the American Atheist, and one of the questions I asked, which was Pine Creek's question, Doug's question, he's another YouTuber, was, would you rather your child be woke or adopt some benevolent or benign form of Christianity? And Dave Silverman's like a truly militant atheist. I mean, he makes me look like chump change. And he said he struggled with the question, and he said Christian, and his daughter is woke, and his daughter doesn't speak to him now. So it's a woke atheist versus a moderate Christian.
Well, I think woke is a cult, though, isn't it? So I think it is a form of religion,
Yeah.
and it isn't benign. And
It's
it
certainly
does
not
it
benign.
does require. It's a little bit Red Army, isn't it? It does require. Now, for example, a woman came. So I do free speech events twice a month, once in London and then once somewhere else in the country or world. And this Sunday, a lady that I've known for a long time, whose son is a tyrant.
A tyrant.
He's got mental illness and he now thinks he's trans. He's tyrannical. He smashes up the house. They are all
old?
living on eggshells. He's about 21, 22 now.
They kick him out of the house.
Well, because then she's frightened that he'll totally transition. So that, for whatever reason, she's putting up with it. I don't know that I would. And I've got a 21-year-old. But anyway, so she said that there was a child, a boy who said he was trans. I don't know how old he is. He might be about 18. He reported his parents for abuse, for misgendering and not going along with him being trans. And his
Wow.
mother just spent 22 hours in a cell because the police came round and arrested
Is
her.
that the 21-year-old?
He's about 18, I think, this kid
Out.
she was talking about.
I'd kick him out
But,
in a heartbeat.
but this is this is cult stuff, right? This is Red Army stuff. You can't question it. And I think actually someone really solid in their religion is far less lunatic. Even if they think that they're talking to God at the end of the garden,
Yeah.
there's they can talk about their faith. So I know a guy called Ollie Lambert, and he actually interviewed IDF and Hamas. And he did the whole thing about Gaza, and he won awards for it. And those two sides will both talk and say that they're right. They will both talk. And this is perhaps not the best time for that story. But when he talked about trans activism and TERFs, all of us on this side of the debate saying don't transition kids, we would all talk. They won't. The whole trans, they won't talk. They don't debate.
Yeah. Constantine Kissin and Francis Foster, now you know them from trigonometry. We did Spectrum Street Epistemology out front of the Supreme Court here in London, and some trans activists who were at a rally came, and I asked them to play Spectrum Street Epistemology or just to do an interview, and they wouldn't do it.
No.
And I told them, and you can see the videos will be out pretty soon. When are they coming out, Reed? Tonight or tomorrow. I said you'll get more if you really believe in this. Like if you genuinely believe in this, you will get more views and do more here than you would from a year of standing on a street corner. The reach on this will be, but they wouldn't do it, and I think that's right, because they're either they don't know the arguments or they think that engaging them is a kind of participating in the patriarchy or something like that. I was at the Battle of Ideas, and I said, and I just got back from ARC, but I said the Battle of Ideas, if people are unwilling, people with whom either we have substantive disagreements or they view us as their ideological enemies, and they won't talk to us, then it's incumbent upon us to make better arguments for their position than they can. So I would have loved to have made those. I would love to debate the trend. I get, like, I'm not just sympathetic. I'm in lockstep. These individuals who are true believers in that, they will not have a conversation.
No.
I would love to debate somebody. Kathleen Sachs is a friend of mine, so full disclosure, I would love to debate her and take the other side of the issue. I would love to do. I think that's how we figure things out, right? We figure things out through reason, through rationality, through evidence, through, like we said, how we started the conversation, through evidence, through research, through study. And when we do that, we can then inform our public policies. But the problem is now we have a bunch of people who freak out on social media, who scream at us, who cover their faces. And I'll tell you off camera, there was just an event today that was very disturbing here in London that happened. But you know, we're in. Do you have the expression a pickle?
Yeah.
You know what it means, like when you run between bases and they kind of you have
Yeah,
that?
you're in like a bind. You're in a difficult spot.
Yeah, in baseball and softball, a pickle is when you don't really have baseball here, do you? No. It's like say there's a runner, for example, on second. You know, understand how the bases work? Yeah. So between second base and third base, and a pickle is they're running in the middle and the person keeps tossing them the ball so that the field in which they can run is ever smaller. But now I totally forgot why I was talking about that okay, it doesn't make any difference anyway. Okay. So when super chats, when I love having my own show. Let's do the street epistemology first. Yeah. From I can't read the name. I can't pronounce the name. When's Kelly gonna play street epistemology? When are you gonna play street epistemology with Reed?
I don't know. Anytime.
All right, cool. Yeah, we'll be at oh god, if I say we'll be at Speaker's Corner Sunday, then some lunatic will come and like try to kill us.
I'm not again until the 29th, the end of November. So I do it the last Sunday of every month.
Oh, okay.
Corner.
Well, why don't we do this then, Reed? I will invite anyone who has a substantive disagreement with me about anything to come to Speaker's Corner, and I'll tell you what I'll do. If you have a substantive disagreement with me, I will play street epistemology with you one-on-one, exactly like I did with Paul Vanderclay and Father Bernard and those other people. It'll just be you and me, and we will ask each other questions, and we'll stand on the mat and we'll move. And if Kelly's there, Posie's there, she'll do that too. All right, Reed, let's do the other question. The panic button, I like that name. Transitioning kids is the new gay conversion therapy. Correct. Andrew Doyle and I had a conversation. You know Andrew Doyle?
Yes.
God, he's fantastic. A just lovely human being. I love him. I'm a lesbian and was a huge tomboy. I would have been convinced to transition. Correct.
Well, we also know that from the Tavistock. So the various doctors that whistle blew, started by Susan Evans about 10, 15 years ago. She was a psychiatric nurse, and her husband, who was a governor, Marcus Evans. They talk about many of the appointments, like the parents were homophobes. Basically, they just didn't want to get.
It's a new form of homophobia, is what Andrew said, and
terrible.
He writes about that in The New Puritans, which is, I don't know if you've read it. It's a great book. Okay, cool. So a few things to wrap up. I love your outfit. Can you turn around and show everybody the back, which is fantastic?
Can you see that?
Excellent. I love that. Where can people buy things, your merch?
So my merch is adulthumanfemale.store, or if in the US, it's .us. If you're in Australia, it's .live. And if you're in New Zealand, it's .space.
Excellent. And where can people find you?
Well, I'm so blocked everywhere. I'm absolutely strangled on TikTok. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me shadow banned profusely on Twitter.
Really?
You can, yeah. Just
it didn't change
honestly,
with Elon.
Well, I'm banned from change.org. I can't even sign a petition. I'm banned from Mumsnet. I'm banned from Patreon. I'm banned from so many places. But you can find me on Twitter is probably easiest, or standingforwomen.com.
God, that's so crazy to me. Like, I mean, even if I can't, that's just, I don't even know that. Reed, is that crazy to you? It's so crazy to me.
I'm more banned than anyone else.
You don't want, what a badge of honor that you don't want kids to be mutilated and
I know, evil. What an evil woman.
What a terrible human being you are. It's just a terrible.
Sorry, everyone.
And I'm very glad to be your friend. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Very much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And thanks to Reed for doing his thing. Thank you for watching. Everything we do is under the umbrella of the National Progress Alliance, nationalprogressalliance.org. It's a nonprofit, independent 501c3. Your generous donations keep us going and keep fueling content like this. So please help us out. Make a donation. We very much appreciate it. Thank you.